Good morning, all the good people. Just a sound check for everybody. We're just admitting many people into this meeting, and we'll be with you in a few seconds' time. Just a sound check again for everybody who's joined. We're just admitting more colleagues into the session. We'll be with you in a few seconds.
Let's stop video. No. Yeah.
Guys, please remember to keep yourselves on mute. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, have we started?
We're going to start in 20 seconds time.
20 seconds. Thank you. Hi, sorry, it's George Murdoch here, Kempston Group, representing Truck Stop in Epping and East London.
Thank you, George. Enjoy the session.
Thank you.
Well, good day, everybody. Thank you for joining the session. I see there are still many people joining in, so as we speak, still admitting more colleagues into the session. But today is a great event. We've been looking forward to being hosted by Nikki Scott and the SaferStops Association, and to be able to share this event with you. Thank you, Nikki, for your kind support. We really appreciate that. Ladies and gents, just a little bit of housekeeping. Please remember to keep yourselves on mute. We're running this in a meeting fashion. And in other words, anybody can unmute and do all sorts of things. But fortunately, many people nowadays know how to handle a virtual session. So just keep yourselves on mute. You're welcome to use, the chat room. And in this chat room, you're welcome to share contact details and greet each other and so on. But please keep the discussions in the chat room related to what's been discussed today. We really appreciate that. And yeah, so looking at our program, and I just want to call up our program here. So today it's the 5th of September, 2024. SaferStops Association hosting the National Truck Stop Framework. And you can see there our host for today is the founder, Nikki Scott Anderson. And she's also going to MC the meeting. So we will obviously introduce to you just now. The Transport Forum is a platform running over 17 years. And everything that we do on this platform is complementary to the public. So you're welcome to download presentations from our website, but the detail will be shared with you, afterwards. During, we're going to send the email to everybody who attended the session, and you'll receive all the links and to download presentations and to also see the session afterwards on YouTube. You're most welcome to do that. Ladies and gents, because this is complementary to the public, obviously, we have many associates and so on with the Transport Forum, and I just need to give some recognition. The Transport Forum platform, our platinum sponsor to the Transport Forum is C-Track. They've been involved since inception of the Transport Forum. Then you can see we've got the professional bodies, SAF, SAPA, RFA, SABOA, ARIA, SaferStops, WISCA, and MIPA as professional bodies, and we're privileged in having media houses formally associated with us as well. Railways Africa Magazine, Freight News, Engineering News, and Focus on Transport and Logistics. And then you can also see the bottom part is all our gold sponsors. They sign up for gold sponsorship agreements, and the majority of them have also been with us for many, many years. So we're very thankful for their kind support to making the Transport Forum platform possible. But today for us, the most important is the SaferStops Association. You can see they say uniting minds, sharing vision and resources, uplifting well-being, boosting road safety for South Africa's commercial drivers. And Nikki Scott is going to tell us more about this great organization. So without further ado, I would like to hand you over to Nikki, and she's going to MC the session for us. She's the founder of SaferStops Association, and she's going to give us the introduction to the SaferStops Association. Thank you so much, Nikki. We appreciate it.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It's always such a privilege to be able to talk to such a wide audience, and I want to recognize today that it's not just transport operators in the room. We have truck stop owners and managers. We have 4 oil companies here today as well, and their colleagues. We have academia in the room from UJ, UCT and Stellenbosch University, and the CSIR. So I'm really, really feeling incredibly grateful and proud that you are all here today. So let's jump in, and let me get my screen up. All right, and into presentation mode. Harry, is it all good?
Perfect.
Right. So I'm going to start today just by giving everyone a background to who the SaferStops Association is. I have been very vocal on social media for a while now, and we've had 2 events, but I think it's really important for those that don't know much about the association that I start there before we go into what we're all here to hear about, which is the National Truck Stop Framework Project. So the SaferStops Association is a registered and compliant NPO or nonprofit organization. with a Section 18A certificate, which is really good for us. We are spearheading let me rephrase it. We are spearheaded by a steering committee from very diverse backgrounds within the industry, looking at the complexities within the transport industry. We are mandated by the Department of Transport to address the needs within the truck stop environment, and directly associated to that, what the drivers actually need in order to live a fulfilled life and a healthy one. And really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is ensure that we raise the bar and create a new standard for transport excellence. Sorry, I have pulled up, Harry, give me a second. I have pulled up the wrong presentation. Give me 1 sec. I need to go back there.
No problem.
I was so sure I had it open a minute ago. Hold on. You know what, it's fine. I can work with what I've got here. So, all right. Are we back again? Can you do that? Sorry, Harry.
I can do that for you.
No, sorry. I think it's... Okay. All right, next slide. And the next one. There we go. That's the correct one. So, just in terms of the last 12 months, the SaferStops Association was actually launched last year in July. And at the launch in Johannesburg, I asked the industry to give me 8 months to prove that this would be an association that could create an immense amount of value in the industry for multiple stakeholders. So here's the journey, and maybe from the genesis of the association. The SaferStops Association was actually born out of the need to address gender diversity. My other company, the Commercial Transporter Academy, is facilitating the biggest gender diversity program in South Africa, and we are developing commercial female truck drivers, and in order to get those women that are more than qualified into line haul, we had to address the truck stop environment, because there isn't sufficient truck stops on all the major routes that women can stop safely and that has proper facilities for them. So that is where we started, and we had to come up with a solution as how we were going to address this challenge. We put together a plan. We then decided to approach USAID, who was funding our gender diversity skills program. They agreed that they would fund the startup of the association on the proviso that there would be industry adoption. We then immediately consulted with the leading associations from the RFA, SABOA, SAPA, SAF, to let them know what we were up to and why we felt that the SaferStops Association could address a very unique area of the ecosystem that we felt had been ignored for a very long time, and that was this truck stop environment. The associations are looking at other areas, but this environment where the drivers stop, rest, consume whatever is available at the truck stops, rejuvenate and get back on the road again, isn't governed by anyone and isn't managed. And as truck stop owners, you're quite isolated in terms of how you communicate with the public. And for me, you know, your value that you create to the whole ecosystem, but also our economy, is incredible, and it's not even highlighted. So that is what we decided, that we had a mechanism to justify, and we had a solution could justify moving ahead with the association. Before I started the association, though, I went and did site assessments on the N3 and the N1, visited a whole lot of truck stop owners and got an understanding of what their challenges were. We then went to the transport operators to see if our findings were correct and were in alignment with some of the concerns that the operators were experiencing with not having enough truck stops that met certain security standards, especially in the dangerous goods and hazardous chemical environment. We also started doing truck driver surveys. We have around 3,500 surveys to date that have been done at the truck stops. And I just want to acknowledge and thank the truck stop owners that have allowed my people to come onto their sites to interview drivers. It has been a critical element in developing where we are today and developing the surveys. So we formalized an NPO. We launched in July 2023. We established the steering committee, and then we proudly joined hands with the Department of Transport early this year in creating the very first truck driver safety and wellness symposium that was held in March this year with over 450 attendees. It was the first time ever that truck drivers came to a two-day event. And that took us into today. The truck stop framework. We realized that if we were going to create the impact for the entire environment, we had to establish status quo. What is available in South Africa right now in terms of truck stops and rest stops? What is the definition of a truck stop? What's the definition of a rest stop? What's a flyover? And these are terms that we would like the industry to start to use. We consulted with various other departments in South Africa, the Department of Minerals and Energy and Resources, to understand that truck stops are very unique in that the area where the drivers park and socialize, shop and use restaurants is not governed by any department. But the area where the fuel and lubricants are provided, that does fall under a department. So again, there are gaps in terms of regulation, and Mahlali is going to talk more to that shortly. Next slide. So just moving along quite quickly, because I took quite a while to go through that slide. There are three key areas that we want to address. Everything that the SaferStops Association is doing is closely aligned to the SDG, the United Nations SDG goals. We believe that by aligning ourselves to these, we have a really great foundation. So our first is driver health and well-being. We want to make it possible for drivers to access the resources that they need to maintain good physical, emotional, and their mental well-being. We know our truck drivers are extremely stressed just by the sheer nature of being a truck driver besides the a criminal element, but just driving not just for themselves, but for everybody that is around them. So to deal with that exhaustion, we need to support the truck drivers. We are hearing of some really challenging situations that our drivers are facing at the borders, and those stressful environments travel with the drivers as they traverse South Africa. It is probably the most important responsibility that we all have here today, is to start looking at finding tangible and sustainable solutions to deal with driver health and wellness. The next is the truck stop infrastructure. Really map out the truck stop infrastructure. I could contact most of the oil companies and get a data list from them of where truck stops are located. So by oil company, we could also get a list of truck stops that are sort of white label facilities, but we couldn't find one place to go and find all the truck stops and a comprehensive list of all the resources that are actually available at those truck stops. We also wanted to be able to support the truck stops in creating gender neutral facilities, because as we stand today, and with the truck driver surveys that we've been doing, around 4.4% of the commercial line haul truck drivers are women, meaning that we have to look at the infrastructure that is going to support them. And that is the role we want to assist you with. And then the last is really helping truck drivers with lifelong learning. Our drivers are sitting in a bubble. The data is showing that the average driver spends 15 nights in a truck stop per month, and it goes as high as 21. That means that they are so separated from their family. Their only connection really is by cellular communication, Wi-Fi. It's hard to get them out of the truck to put them into a classroom to continue that learning environment. And this is something we believe that we, working with you and the wider industry, can start to develop lifelong learning opportunities and really helping drivers adjust to the family environment of, next slide, of managing a family from a distance. So I've said a hell of a lot, and I want to just show you this photo. It caught my attention. It was on social media a couple of days ago. It's of a driver with his feet up on his dashboard. And everything I've said to you today, if we can just remember that at the heart of all of this and everything we are doing, we need to acknowledge that there is a human being that is deserving of dignity and support. And I hope that our little punchline of from worn souls to rested souls, you will agree with me just by a couple of thumbs up that we've got to the point that the industry has to take more care of its drivers. Next slide, Harry. Right, so this will come up later as well, but you can scan to connect, go to our website. My contact details are also there. And we will be sending you this presentation. Moving right along, I'll come back in a bit later just to tell you what the next steps are, but with the idea of what it is that SaferStops is trying to achieve, I'd like to introduce you to Mihlali from the Department of Transport. Mihlali, are you online?
I am most definitely online, Nikki. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Mihlali is going to take us through the collaboration project that we are working with the DOT, which is mapping out the national infrastructure of truck stops in South Africa. Mihlali, looking amazing. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nikki, and good morning to everybody. Thank you, Harry, for opening up this platform for us to come and discuss the National Truck Stop Framework. We stumbled upon Nikki beginning of last year. And the excitement was that she was already entrenched in the industry, already dealing with truck stops and truck drivers in particular. And our excitement was that everything that we were doing in terms of developing the truck stop framework as a department, she was already physically in the industry, speaking to the truck drivers, gathering the data on the existence of truck stops. And I think what was exciting for us as a department was that when we started the process, which had emanated from the strategic intervention of the cabinet-approved road freight strategy, we had discovered that there isn't information on truck stops in the country. There isn't one document that states categorically what a truck stop is in the South African context, how many truck stops do we have, what are the current legislative prescripts that regulate truck stops in the country. So as it were, there is no standing information, and we then sought out to gather the information and develop a framework. The purpose of the framework is to define what a truck stop is in the South African context. We know that there's international benchmarking, which we've also done and you'll get in the presentation, but it's important to kind of bring it down and get an understanding, what does it do for South Africa, but also look at, is there a need for truck stops? And how many truck stops do we have in the country? What kind of services do they provide? What kind of facilities do they have? But also, quite importantly, what do truck drivers require from the truck stops? And it's not just truck drivers, it's the operators and the freight cargo owners as well. What are their safety requirements? What are the requirements of the actual truck drivers? And I think Nikki alluded to some of those in the presentation that she had. What we've further done, and the process that we're currently embarking on, is the legislative framework. So we're gathering what are the legislative prescripts that actually govern truck stops. Now we'll know that truck stops are petrol stations that have graduated to becoming truck stops. So there is no regulation in South African or in South African context that regulates truck stops, but we do have some form of acts and a legislative framework that governs why you need a truck stop, and also looking at the labor and regulation issues at truck drivers need to drive 2 hours and then they need to rest, but also they need to drive 8 hours within a day because those are the Labor Relations Act prescripts on the working conditions of all workers in South Africa. So we've got the National Land Transport Act, which governs the issues of all land or surface land transportation in South Africa. We've got regulations also that emanate from that, but they're not specific to truck stops. We've got regulations that speak to some commodities that we have, especially when it comes to dangerous goods, but they're not specific to truck stops, but they speak to the importance of ensuring that dangerous goods are allocated certain spaces where they stop, example in truck stops. We also have got the Petroleum Products Act, which regulates the licensing of petrol stations in the country, but that does not speak to the regulation of the actual truck stops. So these are some of the legislative frameworks and prescripts that we currently have in the country. Now, Ayanda will be taking you through the actual truck stop discussion that we've developed as a department. And also just to say this, so we're doing this quite differently. We're doing this in collaboration with the private sector, and we're doing this framework in-house. So we have not consulted anybody. We have not gotten any service providers. We're doing it in-house, gathering the information and working with SaferStops in the data collection of the truck stops. Ayanda, please flight the presentation. I think Harry will flight it for you, and then we'll just go through the slides. There we go. There we go. Ayanda, you can please put your video on, and I will then mute myself, and we'll take questions, Q&As after the presentation. Thank you, colleagues.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me and see me. Just by a show of thumbs up so I can begin with the presentation.
All good, Ayanda. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Harry. My name is Ayanda Pasi, and I'll be doing the presentation on the truck stop framework, which is the status quo analysis, which is the first part of what is turning out to be a very extensive and comprehensive document that will be produced by the Department of Transport. Next slide, Harry. So it's not a long presentation. We just go through the background, the purpose, problem statement, definition of a truck stop, status quo analysis, challenges encountered by truck stop operators, which are the owners and the truck drivers themselves, and also look at international benchmarking and international best practice. Next slide, please. So for the background, as Ms. Kata has indicated, that the framework comes from the strategic recommendations of the cabinet-approved RFS in 2017, whereby the road freight strategy highlighted that there are trucks parking illegally on the side of the roads. There's limited parking facilities, which are the truck stops, and we wanted to know the types of facilities needed by truckers in a truck stop. So in trying to address these issues, we conducted a desktop research, which we quickly found out that it was not sufficient, as there's little to no accurate information on truck stops in South Africa. So we decided to undertake an initiative of conducting site visits to truck stops that we could Google and find to gain a better understanding of truck stops in the country. Next slide, please. So for the purpose of the framework, we wanted to understand and improve the efficiency and the functionality of truck stops in the country. So we have a few key objectives that we want to address in the framework, which is to establish an understanding of truck stop operations, define a truck stop in the South African context, develop truck stop standards or a grading system, create a database of all operational truck stops in the country, which will include their location, amenities, and services provided. We also want to establish relations between us as a DOT, truck stop owners, provincial and municipal spheres of government, and state entities, because when we're visiting the truck stops, we realize that there's no sort of working relationship between us, entities, and municipal and provincial governments with the truck stop. Next slide, please. So in our problem statement, in trying to ascertain the issues that are affecting the truck stop industry, we know that freight industry in South Africa plays a crucial role in the economy, as it carries up to about 80+% of freight commodities. And as such, truck stop become an integral part of the supply chain as they offer a place of rest, safety, and medical services to the truck drivers. So we found out that there's no existing source of central information or a database of truck stops in South Africa. We do not understand the daily operations of a truck stop. We have no knowledge of the challenges faced by the truck stops. There are no established standards or a grading of our truck stops. There's no policy or legislation on truck stop by the Department of Transport, sorry. There's lack of gender parity at truck stop facilities, where you find that in some facilities they don't have toilets or offer any services to female drivers. Next slide, please. So in trying to define a truck stop, this is just a generic definition of a truck stop, but once we get into the details of the framework and we're done completing it, we will have a definition of a truck stop that will speak to the South African context, because we know South Africa is a very unique and special country. So we need to have a definition of a truck stop that will identify all of the intricate details and cover them in the definition. So for the generic definition of a truck stop, it says that a truck stop is a specialized facility that is strategically positioned near a national corridor to cater to the specific needs of a truck driver. It should provide an array of services and amenities to ensure the well-being of a truck driver. So here we have a list of services and amenities that should be provided at the truck stop, which are diesel fuel pumps, spacious parking, shower facilities, ablution facilities, wellness clinics, convenience store and entertainment area, Wi-Fi access, a repair and maintenance area, security with CCTV cameras, lodging for overnight stays, and a gym. So in the list above, various factors such as the size of the truck stop, the capital investment, and the location influence the type of services and amenities provided. The list above, we feel it should not be seen as a minimum standard of a truck stop, but whereas in an ideal environment, a truck stop should have all of the identified services and amenities. Next slide, please. So also in defining a truck stop, we need to look at the environmental aspects that are in place. So in defining a truck stop, we need to consider the waste management. There needs to be a waste management plan for proper disposal and recycling of debris and hazardous materials, a water conservation plan for efficient water usage in restrooms, showers, and have clean and drinkable water. There needs to be a green energy plan for the usage of renewable energy sources such as solar panels to power the truck stops. There is a truck stop called Valtrucking that has solar panels that is powering certain portions of the truck stop. So you see that truck stop is already taking an initiative in having a green energy source to power themselves in case of any load shedding or any load reduction that they might experience. Next slide. So also in the status quo, we discovered that there's a lack of information on truck stop. Because of that lack of information, no real and effective decisions can be made. In turn, it has adverse effects on the freight industry because the movement of commodities on the road increases daily due to inefficiencies of rail, thus putting more pressure on the road network. So without any proper and reliable information, we cannot make effective and reliable plans for truck stops. There's an increasing number of trucks on the road. Most truck stops face a pressing issue of overcrowding or limited parking space. This especially happens during the peak operating hours of a truck stop, which are between 10 and 4 a.m. in the morning, and most truck stops struggle to accommodate all of the trucks. That's where you find that some truck stops are parking on the side because they cannot be accommodated. There's a lack of legislation. In other cases, truck drivers park on the side of the road, not far from a truck stop, because they're not obliged by any law to park in a truck stop. And therefore, they know that there'll be no disciplinary measures taken against them as a result of parking in a truck stop. And in other cases, some companies do not offer any financial support to the truck drivers by giving them cash to pay for the truck stop services, or even providing them with a banking card so they can pay for the services that they would require from a truck stop. So we also highlighted that the role of the Department of Transport needs to be clear and defined as in the truck stop space, whether it be through our own entities at a provincial or municipal level. As truck stop is a road infrastructure, even though it's privately owned, the DOT needs to be involved to effectively coordinate plans for the entire road freight industry. Next slide, please, Harry. So in doing our status quo analysis, between the periods of 2019 and 2023, we visited about 24 truck stops. As you all know, in 2020, we experienced COVID, so we had to stop our site visits, but we did manage to visit various truck stops across the country, which have various amenities and services that vary in size. Next slide, please, Harry. So this is just a map indicating the locations of the truck stop that we visited. And in the future, once the document is completed, we want to also indicate the distances between the truck stops. So in case that our framework advocates for more truck stops to be established, we can identify specific areas in specific provinces, say truck stops in this area are too far apart from each other. We might need one in this area. So that's what we'll do for the truck stops. Next slide, please. So truck stop challenges. Truck stop challenges are twofold. There are truck stop challenges that affect the operators, which are the owners, and challenges that affect the drivers. These ones are the challenges that affect the operators. It's infrastructure limitations. Many truck stops suffer from outdated infrastructure, limited parking spaces, inadequate facilities, making it very difficult to accommodate the increasing number of trucks on the road. Accessibility. This one also affects drivers, but we put it in under the challenges for operators. Truck stop, it affects truck stop mostly located on major corridors, which experience challenges with exit and entry of trucks, as there are no signs or traffic lights to control the flow of vehicles to allow for ease of entry and exit of a truck stop. This was a challenge that we were made aware of by a truck stop in Zerast. The truck stop is called MPT truck stop. It's right along the N4 before you entering Zerast. So the truck stop manager did indicate that they find it very difficult for trucks to enter and exit because cars are traveling at high speeds and they experience accidents on that road. So another challenge is that safety and security concerns. Ensuring the safety and security of truck drivers, their cargo, and the truck stop facilities themselves is a constant challenge. Issues such as theft, vandalism, inadequate lighting contribute to a sense of insecurity. So for high risk, there needs to be high risk cargo solutions where bespoke solutions are required for high risk cargo in their vehicle convoys. In times of civil unrest, we know that operators use truck stops during civil unrest, but revert to unsecured parking when this risk is lower. This was experienced by a truck stop in Moy River, where during the KZN unrest, there were more trucks using the facility, but after that, then everything went back to the normal number of trucks that were using the facility. There are cheap parking solutions. Operators choose cheaper parking solutions that do not invest in secure parking for drivers and the assets that they carry. There's also questionable driver behavior. Issues with drivers bringing sex workers into the truck stop facilities, bringing alcohol into the truck stops, put themselves and other users of the facility at risk. Next slide, please. So also for operators, the operational costs associated, cost of fuel, labor, maintenance, put constant pressure on truck stop operators to maintain profitability. Again, driver behavior. There's questionable driver behavior results in extensive damage and theft and driving up maintenance cost, where you find that some drivers damage the infrastructure within the truck stop facility. They steal the shower heads, they steal taps, they damage toilet seats, they steal toilet papers. So that makes one wonder if they really want to take care of the facilities that they are using. So that drives up the cost of maintenance for the truck stop owner. There's a lack of up-to-date data. There's a lack of current data on industry trends to support investment into existing or new facilities, where you find truck stop owners are not sure whether to invest into the facility or not, or build new facilities because they're not sure of the trends, because there's also talk of a road to rail. They might not be sure of how many trucks might be left on the road if that plan is ever implemented successfully by the DOT. There's issue of marketing and awareness challenges where truck stops don't really market themselves very well. There's a few where you find on social media, such as Facebook, where they advertise their facilities, or if they have any special that's happening, they advertise it there, but generally you wouldn't find them anywhere else. Because even on the sides of the road, it's very few truck stops that advertise on the sides of the billboard that indicates this is a truck stop in so many kilometers. They have this type of facilities. So that is also an issue for them. The issue of economic cycles, economic downturns can reduce freight volumes, impacting the revenue of truck stops, while economic booms leads to capacity issues. There's a rising operational costs, fluctuating fuel prices. Economic downturns can strain the financial viability of truck stops. Balancing profitability with the provision of high quality service is a persistent issue. So with the reduced revenue, despite a continuous increase in trucks in key economic routes, there has been a corresponding rise in overnight parking at truck stops. The impact of delays, where you find if there's a delay at a border or a port, it affects the driver's ability to use a truck stop facility, where if the driver feels that they are late or they are late, they might choose to drive all the way through to their final destination without ever using a truck stop. Then affects the income of a truck stop. High investment cost. The cost of establishing and maintaining a truck stop is very high. One of the most important key things in the truck stop industry is land, where you find some of the bigger truck stops with a lot of facilities. The land that they're on, they own it, so it's much easier for them to cultivate the land, make sure that there are facilities that meet the needs of a truck driver. Whereas if someone else is operating a truck stop, but they do not own the land, it's very difficult for them to invest into the property and make it more efficient and meet the needs of a truck driver, because you'll never know that if the landlord decides one day, I want to sell this land or do something else with it, then it becomes an issue for them. Next slide, please. Truck driver challenges. These are the ones faced by the truck drivers. Driver fatigue and health. There's limited access to quality resting areas. Amenities can lead to driver fatigue, negatively impacting health, safety, productivity. Inadequate resting facilities contribute to a higher risk of accidents and decreased well-being. As our partners, SaferStops Association, have indicated in the presentation that around 38% of truck drivers spend 15 to 25 days at a truck stop. The total working hours including the loading and offloading, can exceed 18 hours a day, which is quite a lot. They are on constant alert due to increased risk arising from crime syndicates. I'm sure all of us in this platform are aware that we've seen videos of truck drivers being shot at, attempted hijacking, so that increases their anxiety while they're on the road, which is not a good thing for them. Their diets and inherent lifestyle diseases result in higher than normal fatigue levels, which they have to endure on their own. There's also a reduced lifespan, where their lifespan is reduced by up to 13 years because of their lifestyle and the type of work that they're doing. Limited access to support. There's funding limitations that impact drivers' access to well-stocked clinics, essential medical experts who can support them in managing their health challenges. And truck stop owners are guided by driver spending trends. So rather than investing in healthy solutions to support nutrition, exercise, and safe, restful facilities. Next slide, please. So also challenges affecting the truck drivers, the image of the industry. We know that the industry is full of crime, there's poor health, there's damaged family relationship because of the number of days that they spend away from home. So new generational thinking is resulting in low interest in becoming a truck driver, thus creating a new risk in our supply chain security. There's operational inefficiencies, insufficient parking spaces, long waiting time at truck stops can lead to delaying delivery schedules, disrupting the supply chain. That's what I indicated earlier by saying that if there are delays anyway, the driver gets affected. And also if there's a delay in exiting the truck stop, because if you've ever spoken to any truck stop owner, they'll tell you around 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., truck drivers are wanting to go out on the road. So there are long queues waiting to exit the truck stop. The driver needs poor facilities and a lack of support services at truck stops can contribute to driver dissatisfaction. As I've stated earlier, no allowance for parking fees. Truck drivers cannot use truck stops as they are not given financial allowance to pay for the usage of truck stops, leading them to parking on the side of the roads. And on the other hand, there are drivers that are given financial support, but they choose not to use the money they are given for its intended purposes, where you find they're parking on the side of the roads. And if as an operator, you're sitting, okay, you're checking on the tracker that a truck stop is in a truck, that the truck is in a truck stop, but you find when you actually go there, it's parked on the side of the road because the tracker will indicate the nearest location where the truck is. So in terms of hygiene, some truck stops do not have good hygiene, thus affecting the overall wellness of the truck driver. They sometimes offer borehole water, which can easily be infected by bacteria, which can make the truck driver sick. Next slide, please. So we also conducted a study on looking at truck stops in the SADC region, just to compare with what we have in South Africa in terms of the facilities. We looked at a truck stop in Michukwane, called Michukwane Truck Stop in Tanzania, Katanga Truck Park in the DRC, Windhoek Truck Stop in Namibia. As you all see that all of these three truck stops have varying facilities that maybe it's because of the needs of the truck drivers. Next slide, please. This is just a map indicating where the truck stops are within the SADC region. Next slide, please. So in researching for international best practice, we found a truck stop called Parking Automatism in Citronex in Poland, which is situated between the border of Poland and Germany. It has a lot of facilities, as stated in the presentation. Gary, can you move to the next slide, which is the most interesting part about the truck stop? This truck stop, as you can see on the picture, it's demarcated parking, which in South African truck stop that we have visited as DOT, we have not seen this. So this is something we would like to see, where the markings on the road or within the facility are clearly marked, and you can see where the truck is supposed to park. Next slide, please, Harry. And we can see that there's also segregation between the trucks and the personal vehicles of people who might be working at the truck stop, and accessibility to the truck stop is very clear and well indicated on the lines on the road. So that's something we would like to see happening in the truck stops in South Africa. Even the paving of the roads, you find that in some truck stops we visited, there's a lot of dust that can affect the health of a truck driver who's using that facility. So we want to see some of the truck stops in South Africa being paved so that there's minimum dust or wind that can affect the health of a truck driver. Next slide, please. I think this is the last one. Okay, so in conclusion, given the critical role of truck stops in a transportation network and the challenges that they face, it is very clear from us that there is a need for a comprehensive framework that will integrate best practice, address regulatory and technological changes, enhance safety and security, promote economic sustainability, and most importantly, support driver well-being. So we believe that as DOT and our partners, SaferStops Association, that by addressing these critical areas A comprehensive framework can contribute to the overall efficiency, sustainability, and resilience of the truck stop industry, ultimately benefiting the truck drivers, logistics companies, and the wider economy. Thank you. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Ayanda. Before we go to Q&A, Mtlali, it's echoing. If we can just hold off questions until the end, please. Mtlali,
Okay, thank you so much. My phone is acting up, so I'm trying to log on in someone else's phone. Am I audible, Nikki?
Yes, you are.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I wanted to just say in conclusion, we've established a steering committee, which is chaired by the Department of Transport. We have Sandral, and the reasons we have Sandral is looking at what Ayanda has presented, that in Ziras, there's a problem of access to truck stops in terms of both the signage, but also access because it is on the freeway. And that is the prerogative of Sandral to create those accesses, especially on the national routes that go into the freeway. So Sandral is part of the steering committee. CBRTA is also part of the steering committee. They've recently established developed a truck stop strategy or plan, which is looking at them actually owning truck stops around the country, specifically around the border areas, so that they can control the cross-border movement, because that is the area of expertise. So that steering committee is DOT, it's CBRTA, it's Sandral, it's Department of Minerals, Resources and Energy, to look at the legislative prescripts that manage and govern petrol stations, which have evolved into becoming truck stops, and our strategic partners, which is SaferStops. And the process to date is that we've done the inception report, which is what we presented to you. We're now in the process of developing the legislative framework. Parallel to that, with SaferStops, we are going to the truck stops, gathering the information, and it's a data collection exercise where we want to understand what the truck stops have, what they do not have, but also look at what do they want to have. And to that effect, we're speaking not only to the truck stop owners, but also the truck drivers and operators, as well as the cargo owners. So that is where we are currently. Thank you so much, Nikki.
Thank you, Mtlali, and thank you, Ayanda, for that very comprehensive presentation. So guys, just to bring you to the next stage, what you've heard now up to this point is why the SaferStops Association was created and how we have identified the need to work with transport operators, with the truck stop business owners, with the drivers, and with the wider ecosystem that incorporates the insurance underwriters, the Provident Fund and employee benefit insurers, OEMs, roadside assistance, and all of this. And this is why I say it is so amazing. It's an entire economy that works around the truck stop, and we believe that the truck stop itself could be the center of that. The truck stops also have the ability to support the local communities. I was so excited to go to one of the truck stops where they had an OK Express, and the communities could access that OK Express and buy goods at the same price as if they had gone into the larger towns and gone to a bigger OK Bazaars, which means that we can actually, from a truck stop, support those communities. And there are all these initiatives around entrepreneurship and employment that can individuals can provide support to the truck stops through the laundries, gyms, barbers, and so on. So it really is a wonderful time to get on board and to become part of what we are trying to do as, number one, as an association, and then as in the collaboration with the DOT and the agencies in mapping out the truck stops. I want to reassure everyone on the call that our intention, as we go into this last presentation, is to put the truck stop owners at ease. We don't want to isolate anyone. We really want to work alongside you to get to the very best environment in every province because there are certainly provinces that are terribly underrepresented with truck stop infrastructure. So in order for us to go and do the mapping out the truck stops, the SaferStops Association and the DOT will have teams that will come through to your sites. But first, it starts with a self-assessment. If I can introduce Sheldon. Sheldon is a consultant in London that we have been working with, and has been instrumental in the design of the truck stop self-assessments. A self-assessment is basically the assessment that we will be sharing with each one of you guys as business owners to self-assess your own truck stop and to share that data with us. And then from there, the team from the DOT and SaferStops Association will come and visit you and sit with you and run through those surveys. So Sheldon, if you could please explain the methodology and the tiering of these truck stops that will be used in the National Truck Stop Framework Project.
Thank you. Sharing my screen, everybody can see it.
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. So I think as we've heard before, there is a lot of information that is intended to be collected and used within the DOT's National Truck Stop Framework. And the information that we're going to be collecting and introducing you to in the survey is essentially a hand-in-glove process to be able to support that information that is going to be needed. So I think, as we've highlighted in the earlier slides, why is there a need for this? The comprehensive efforts that have gone together to try and collate this information, and recognizing the gaps that we have, in the market, in the understanding, in the data that's available, has led to this. There's a clear lack of regulations. There's no benchmarking that allows us to make a comparison and therefore offer suggestions for improvement. There is a disparity between, sites that may be 20,000 square meters within, industrial urban areas versus sites that are up to 600,000 square meters, on motorway and highway spaces where they got a lot more capacity to be able to expand. We've looked at international research, as highlighted earlier on, some of the work that has been done to look at these sites has gone international. Here in the UK and the EU, there's an extensive amount of work and research that's gone into the study of truck stops and the improvement of the facilities to support that. So we're taking on board some of the best practice from that and using that to support this survey. Ultimately, the drive is to be able to improve the facilities for the drivers, reduce the number of accidents and deaths on the roads, provide a more safer and wholesome environment for the drivers, recognizing end of the day they are an extension of the office environment. They are providing a vital services to the backbone and support of the country, and we have to find a way to be improved. So while legislation is there to help enforce these procedures, we mustn't lose sight of the fact of why we're actually doing this. At the end of the day, it is to help improve the quality and the lives of the drivers. So I think if I just introduce myself very briefly, having started that. So I'm Sheldon Scott, an experienced consulting business analyst and project manager with a track record in leading complex service transformations and organizations like His Majesty's Treasury, Ministry of Justice and Metropolitan Police in the UK, to name a few. Have extensive experience in operational efficiency and technology transitions. And regulatory compliance. So to this particular survey, I bring a strategic perspective of the infrastructure and the standards that can be applied and used to improve the services that we're looking at. From a personal perspective, having grown up in a family where my father was a truck driver for over 15 years, I have a personal connection to this industry, and therefore it feels a passion to be able to see the improvement to these services. So let's talk a bit about the methodology behind the survey. So we've looked at how we can efficiently structure the survey, and it's essentially made up of over 70 questions covering a number of sections. In this case, we've got security, we've got amenities, we've got driver health and well-being, and environmental standards, to name a few of those. Each question is weighted in accordance with the importance that it contributes towards the driver's safety, comfort, and operational efficiency. There will be a site tiering system that will be driven out of that. So depending on how the sites perform against each of the elements that in categories that we are measuring, we'll be able to tier the sites, as you can see from the little icons there. So the sites will be able to use evidence to say, I'm a 4-star site or 5-star site, in terms of service levels and offerings and convenience on the site, but equally, and more importantly, the security that we offer on site. In this case, we've got 3 locks for a site, that would be able to be backed up with evidence in terms of the security and services that are available on that site. In addition, recognizing, as I mentioned earlier, a site that is 20,000 square meters versus something that is 600,000 square meters, each site is going to be unique. The locations, the sizes, the available services. So we're going to be using the data to be able to benchmark the sites according to the categories, whether it's an urban site, an industrial site, highway site, so forth and so forth. Each one has its own limitations and benefits that it brings to the table. So combining the site tiering system along with the categories, has the ability to bring clearer, robust information that is meaningful to the site and not just generically compared, and people then say, well, I can't compete with site X because they are 5 times my size. We'll make the information fair and viable to the users, and information that then gets produced from that and the reports each site will then find suitable, to be able to apply to their site. In addition to that, as mentioned, there are a number of industry standards, international standards that we've looked at. Whether it's the EU labeling project, which was set up quite a while ago, to look at how we can categorize, benchmark, and support the sites across through to the Australian ATA best practice guide, which is more about the environmental standards and efficiencies that go with that. But we'll come on to that a bit later on. So delving into it in terms of what we're actually measuring in the survey, a bit more detail. First we're focusing on a number of key metrics. Security, as mentioned, we're evaluating everything from CCTV coverage to mobile patrols and lighting. We will be looking to place a higher score on comprehensive 24/7 security measures. Next, we'll look at the amenities, including restrooms, dining options, health services that directly impact the driver's well-being. Driver wellness and health is a major focus, particularly with the recent survey, as Nikki alluded to, indicates that there are top priorities for those on the road, how it is we can improve that wellness and health for the drivers. And finally, environmental sustainability, is another key area. We're looking at the green practices like the recycling programs, as highlighted in the DOT's presentation earlier on. In addition, we'll be collecting information on EV charging points and any efficiency structures, the solar paneling, the recycling, and so forth. So each category is designed to be able to capture the most crucial aspects of these truck stops. The data we collect here will form the foundation of the tiering process, as well as the guide for the future improvements. So how will the survey be conducted? Initially, it'll start off with a self-assessment where the sites will have an online survey they'll be able to complete against the 70-odd questions. They'll be able to give their responses and any additional information to support their responses. That'll then be followed up with an external assessment from SaferStops, where the assessors will then visit the site to be able to then validate the information provided in the self-assessment, gather additional information relating to the site, and also gain photographic evidence. After all this, the information will then be collated. Sites will then be categorized into their various categories, urban, industrial, so forth. And they will also then be provided with the tiering structure that we mentioned for the services and the security. That information will be reported on and used for the reporting processes and feedback back to the sites. And then the ongoing analysis across, 70-odd questions plus additional will allow us to then start doing some more detailed analysis into the information that we're collecting and then improvements that can be made across like-for-like sites. So putting this into a formal model, shall we say, this diagram here essentially is what we call a communication framework or matrix. It's a flow starting at the top from experiences. The sites will each offer services. The drivers themselves will consume those services. And that'll be the experiences of those sites. Those experiences from the drivers in terms of the feedback that we get from the drivers, the information provided as part of the survey, the information that's collected by SaferStops, then becomes the stories about those sites. In other words, the information pertaining to those sites. Those stories or that information and data that we collect then become part of the reporting that we will then use, the consolidated reporting about experiences across the country. Maybe it might be regional, more down to but either way, we'll be able to collate that. That information will then be presented in various formats, whether it's reports, presentations, digital platforms, across the websites and apps. But ultimately, we want to be able to make sure that the information reaches the target audience, i.e. the drivers and the sites themselves. Information to show that there is either a site that's out of action, due to some upgrades or work that are happening there, and the drivers should avoid that site, or there's new improvements or new services being added to a site that drivers should be aware of that would encourage them maybe to visit that site. This model is cyclical, so it never just happens once and information is collected and shared once. It'll be continually recycled, new improvements, continually recycled and made available, and therefore driving the process of continual service improvement through the industry. So what does this information actually do for parties? We have a decision tree where the information is made available, people can access it. So for the drivers, the transparent ranking of the systems will help them choose the stops that they meet, the need for the safety, the comfort and amenities available to them. In addition, the transport companies, if they are pre-booking the truck stops for the parking, they will also be able to determine what is going to be most suitable for their drivers and the cargo that they're carrying. For the truck stops themselves, the information that we'll collect will be able to provide clear guidance on where to invest to have the most impact. Sites that have higher tiering due to improved amenities and services and security will be able to use the logos we identified earlier on as a status for marketing to attract more traffic. And then for the transport companies, provides a valuable guide in terms of being able to ensure that the stopping locations maximize safety and efficiency, potentially leading to reduced insurance premiums and improved driver retention. So there is a lot that can come out of it. I think a lot of people will stand to benefit from the information in terms of how it gets presented and how it gets used. So leveraging this data, as you mentioned, the benchmarking and specification are powerful tools that come out of the survey data. So not all trucks, as we said, are created equal. That's why our survey takes into account the unique characteristics of each site. Whether it is located in an urban area or along a rural highway, tiering system benchmarks each stop according to its category. So this will help the operators maximize the site's potential, providing tailored services that meet the specific needs of drivers and fleet managers. It's all about ensuring that each stop, no matter where it is, can be the best version of itself. So by analyzing this data, we can offer category-specific insights. For example, understanding the strengths and limitations of a large rural site compared to a smaller urban site helps stakeholders make informed decisions. The data can also be used to guide future site expansions or innovations, and then focusing on areas that will provide the highest return on investment, both in terms of driver satisfaction and operational efficiency. So looping around to reference some of the international information that we've looked into to be able to support the creation of the survey. You know, as mentioned earlier, we've looked at the European Union's label project, Australia's ATA project, and then two of them. And in each of those documents, each of them provided different insight, whether it is into environmental standards, whether it's into driver safety, whether it's into parking security. Each publication potentially provides, a different perspective on that. Ultimately, being able to look at all those publications and incorporate them into the survey that we've got, and then be able to do the benchmark, it puts us in a position where we can start making a like-for-like comparison to international services, and therefore putting us in a position where we can remain competitive and stand on the world stage in terms of the services that we're offering. This is just a glimpse of some of the documents that we've used and we've referenced. And this slide here references some of those documents in terms of the focuses that each document is presenting and how that information in that document has been relevant to us. We will share these slides after the session, so conscious there is a lot of information on the page, but you'll be able to read it at your leisure afterwards. So I think, as we've just identified, there is a lot there. This isn't just an initiative we've thought about locally. We haven't just thought, thumb in the sky, finger in the sky, what can we come up with? There is a lot of science that's gone behind this. We've looked at what works, especially from here in the UK and the EU services and the improvements they've made. I've managed to identify those, use those, and then we can start making that progress. It is a journey, but it's something that will definitely, even the smallest step, a 2% improvement, will make a significant difference to the industry, and it's how we can do that. So let me hand back to Nikki in terms of the next steps. Thank you.
Sheldon, thank you so much. That was comprehensive. And like we said, a lot of information there, guys. You will get all of these presentations emailed through to you. If you registered for today, we have your email address, so we will share that with you. Ultimately, once we have been able to map out the truck stop infrastructure, we, working with the databases that we have received and recommendations from the truck driver Facebook sites, we've managed to identify a really significant number of facilities, but there are still facilities we don't know of. And we're going to be starting, in fact, we started last week already, starting to visit the truck stops. We would encourage you, if you look at the QR code at the bottom left-hand corner, if you could scan that, if you are a truck stop owner, or and you're willing to be an early adopter, please scan it and just fill out the quick Google form so that we can put you onto the priority list to come and view your site. Guys, the next steps really is we're encouraging everyone on the call today to become a SaferStops member. Membership is free. There are 3 categories to membership. There is the truck stops, there are drivers, and then obviously there's the wider stakeholder group, which are from all environments, operators and insurers, underwriters, and so forth. So become a member today. It is a very easy process, and There is a QR code there as well if you'd like to do that. Become an early adopter, fill out the Google form so that we can get you on the list and get the site surveys off to you to complete. And then we want to draw your attention to the fact that the Truck Drivers Symposium that was held this year is going to be repeated next year. We're very grateful to all the partners and sponsors that is making that possible. So it is in the diary for next year, the 7th to the 9th of March. Please look out for communication on that. The actual website pertaining to the Truck Driver Symposium will go live in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then finally, for the truck stop owners that are here, the Fleet Safety Awards has a category for truck stops. And this year, the category is the most improved truck stop. We're encouraging you guys, please go look up the Fleet Safety Awards, register your truck stop and participate in the competition for recognition. I think the prize is 20,000 Rand. It's really worthwhile. So I'm going to open up to Q&A because we have 15 minutes left. And just before I do that, I think I got distracted when I said that once we've collected all this data, our intention is to take all of this data into a app, the equivalent of what will look like an Airbnb for truck stops, where all of you guys will be able to place your facilities, advertise your facilities, and draw in more traffic into your truck stops. And yeah, let's go for it. Let's see if there are any questions. Harry, how do we move forward from this point? Do people just ask a question or?
Thank you, Nikki. Can we ask that the panelists maybe switch on their cameras and unmute so that we can do a spotlight to their cameras? And then the audience, they're welcome to unmute or will raise their hand. Once unmuted, only speak when you've been recognized. You can address a question to Nikki or the panel as a whole, and then Nikki will moderate for us. So let me just see who we've got on here. Sheldon, we bring him in. I don't know, Yanda, is Yanda there? Let me see. And the panelists also unmute so that they move up on my list so that I can pick them up, please.
Mute.
That's the wrong one, sorry. That's the right one. Okay, so I see there we've got Marius Puri. Marius, you're welcome to unmute and ask your question.
Good morning. Yeah, still morning. Good morning, everybody. Nikki and guys, thank you very much for a very insightful symposium. I really gained a lot of insight here. Nikki, you know me. I'm full of questions and full of concerns and all that. One of my concerns, and I haven't seen your guys address this, is the cost. So let's say, for instance, I've got a truck stop, and I'm a tier 1 truck stop now, and I charge 1,500 Rand per truck per night, or something like that, as an example. Because I'm a tier 1, I can do that. Will there be regulations on costs per truck stop? I know you can't just go around and say you can't charge this much, you can't charge that much, but somewhere there needs to be a curb where we say, listen, you can't go over this. That's my first question. I've got about 505 and a half, but yeah, that's the first serious question that I'm concerned about. The second one is, how do we get operators to buy into this? truck owners, truck companies, the McDonald's Transports, the Value Logistics, the Kempston Truck Hires? How do you get those guys? Because they are, in the end, the controller sitting behind that computer is the one that rules the driver. So if that controller tells the driver, sorry, boss, you're not going to stop today, you're going to drive right through to Cape Town. How are we going to get those kind of people to buy in? Out of experience, I've got 33 years experience in the transport industry, and I know that's what happens in the transport industry in the controller office. I think, and then, yeah, for once, that's two questions that I'm really concerned about, is the cost and the buy-in from our transport companies.
All right, so on the cost, the SaferStops Association will not be trying to direct the truck stop owners in any way on how they will be charging and the fees that they will ask for. I mean, if you think about the hotel industry, a hotel can be rated 5-star and it can be 5 to 10,000 Rand per night. You as the user get to decide if you want to stay at that tier 1 5-star facility and pay that price. So it doesn't make any sense to a truck stop owner to overprice themselves, because they might be beautifully rated, but nobody is going to come and use their facility. So I think common sense is going to have to prevail. In terms of the operators, it's an ongoing journey, and Mahlali and I have been talking about this for a very long time, that there's so much happening. The accountability index is a project that's happening on the side, where we are looking at the accountability of consignors and consignees, where they need to start taking more responsibility for the operators that they are appointing. But this is a journey we're on, Marius, and I trust that over time, with more awareness and an association and a department that is essentially focused on trying to work together and pull the industry together to focus on common goals, we'll be able to achieve some of the challenges that have not been addressed in the past. Mahlali, is anything you'd like to add there?
Yes, totally. So the framework will not be looking at the pricing issue. We do want to also note that it is privately truck stops rather are privately owned. So it will be on the onus of the truck stop owner to give the pricing. But there is a general pricing that is currently underway anyway with all the truck stops that we've visited. So there aren't any truck stops that are highly exorbitant. And also because you want to attract the truck drivers to the truck stops, you don't want to repel them by overpricing. That's the first one. Secondly, we will also be holding a national colloquium with every stakeholder. So that includes the operators and the drivers. And I think it's important for us, and we started this off when we had the symposium, where we create a platform of engagement and looking at what the challenges and issues are. Because the challenges of the truck stop the challenges of the truck stop owner is different to that of the operator as well as the truck driver. I mean, Ayanda alluded to issues of land space or land utilization. So those are the issues that we want to create synergies so that every single person who is part of the stakeholders of this process understands where everyone comes from. So that national colloquium will also be part where we are discussing and having discussions with the operators to look at what are their challenges, do they understand what we're trying to do? And again, I want to reiterate that the Department of Transport, we don't want to take over truck stop ownership or truck stop management. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to create nodal points specifically within the corridors that are effective and efficient and ensure the seamless movement of cargo for South Africa. Thanks.
Thank you, Nikki. Let's take a question from YouTube, and then after that we can go to Kelly and Kevin.
Sorry, Harry. I also want to pose a question.
Thank you, George. We'll get to you just now. So the question on YouTube from Nankululeko Makambule is, did the assessment look at the interface of the various stakeholders in the operators of truck stop from a safety and security perspective? This includes traffic officers, SAP, and private security.
Just ask the first part of that question again. Did the
Did the assessment look at the interface of the various stakeholders in the operations of truck stop from a safety and security perspective? This includes traffic officers, SAP, and private security.
Can we take all the questions and then answer after all of them?
Nikki, you right with that?
Okay.
Thank you. Right. Let's take Kelly Barnett.
Right, just Kelly Bonnet, SAF and Passata. Just going back to the cost, especially if your transporters are going to be going cross border, which is obviously quite a large part of the pie, beg your pardon. Especially those that are going up to Zimbabwe. If you go through the new Bike Bridge border post, you're going to be paying $200 just to get through there with a large vehicle. The cost would be quite a thing. In terms of the actual truck parks themselves, I think if you're wanting to bring in the larger transporters, I think the most important thing would be safety and security, because that's obviously a big issue. I deal a lot with transporters that go across border. A lot of the times over there, a truck stop is basically just an open field. There's no security, there's no fencing. And there's actually one that I actually drove past in Zambia. There was literally a gate with no fence. Obviously, things are a little better over here, but safety and security, cameras, fencing, guards, that type of thing would be very beneficial. Yeah, thank you very much. Oh yeah, just one last thing. If you one point was mentioned where transporters may not give their drivers enough finances to be able to make use of the truck stops, or they may not have finances themselves. An idea to get around that would maybe be making use of corridors. They do payments across borders, and obviously locally as well. They're at most border posts in Southern Africa. It may just basically for making use of like a cashless transaction type thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nikki, you can take another question. All right. Kevin Govender.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for the session. I think it was long overdue. Just a few issues. I think I must concur with Kelly. Safety and security is a big issue that we're experiencing nationally, where we pay the fees to get into truck stops. There's no fencing, there's no cameras, there's no security. So we've had a lot of incidents regarding safety and security. I think that's something we really have to look at. The other issue is congestion at truck stops, and there's no control over vehicles coming in. All they are worried about is getting the cash and just letting the trucks come in. And then there's congestion, and the next morning there's chaos at the truck stops. Then I would like to find out the N2 North going up Richards Bay, Piet Retief, Ermelo to Joburg. We have a major issue on that route with regard to truck stops. There isn't a proper truck stop on that route. And then N2 South going down Cockstead, Amtata, Butterworth, East London. That's a major issue. Those are two routes that we really have a problem with truck stops. And then one last one is compliancy of truck stops. Is there any chance of, I know, the Department of Transport getting involved to ensure that truck stops are compliant? Okay, thank you for that. And thank you once again for the session.
Thank you. Let me just answer those because there's quite a bit here already. Sheldon, in terms of the security, I'm not sure I'm understanding this question from YouTube about incorporating private security, the traffic officials, and so on. Do you have an understanding of what is being asked on that question?
I understand the question, Nikki.
Okay, go for it.
So the truck stops don't are not aligned to traffic officials. They actually have their own private securities that they have. And I would align this with the question that's been asked now by Kevin. The problem and the challenge that we have is that we can't force them to have a certain level of security. But what the framework is going to do is highlighting part of the necessities for you to attract, especially when you grade and level them. It's the issue of fencing, it's the issue of private security, but it's also the issue of the cameras, because there's a lot of incidences that happen at the truck stops where trucks are actually being vandalized, commodities are being stolen because of the lack of security there. So as we look into this, that is what we want to heighten, but we cannot enforce, for an example, the traffic officials or the traffic metropolis to actually be part of the truck stops, because it's a privately owned a unit. It's not part of what government, like for instance, you'll have traffic officials on the actual corridors, on the N3, on the N2. So that is the challenge that we're going to have, but definitely it's an issue that we're looking into, and it's going to be one of the major issues that truck stops need to comply to, because you can't be a truck stop and not have effective and adequate security 24 hours, because they are utilized 24 hours. I'll capture the others when you're done, Nikki, or can I continue?
Yeah, hold on a second on that one. So the survey is obviously, which is why Sheldon was talking to the two indicators on the star rating and the locks. They are the two primary indicators for us around security. It is the feedback we got from the operators when we started this process, when I was taking you through the journey map. So addressing security at the truck stops and the infrastructure that is available. But I also want to say is that there is there are so many stakeholders that are willing to invest in truck stops and they want to know what the truck stops need. So when you fill out the survey, be as brutally honest as possible, because it's only in that exercise will we then actually start to understand how we can assist with funding to build these truck stops up to the standard that they need. Matlali, you mentioned about the routes. Yes, the N2 North and the N2 South into the Transkei definitely are challenges. So is the route from Northern Cape down to the Eastern Cape. We have 8 economic routes that we will be looking at initially. And then from there, the secondary phase will be the next route. We are going to stay within the country. And then phase 2, we will then start looking at our neighboring countries. But the exercise will actually open up for us the routes that don't have sufficient infrastructure. Where do we need to put more truck stops, and where do we need to make dramatic improvements in the existing infrastructure? So that it's twofold. Matlali, if you want to add to that.
Also to the cross-border element, the Trans-Kalahari has got a discussion document on the non-existence of truck stops, particularly on that route. So the Trans-Kalahari has got the 3 countries and is currently being chaired by Botswana. So we are looking into that as well. We also have Swaziland in the map as well. That's looking at how can we create synergies in terms of what we have as a country and what can go and be emulated in the whole SADC region. So we are looking at the cross-border element. And as I've stated, CBRT has also drafted their own truck stop strategy, which also looks into this and heightens that interconnectivity and the synergies and consistencies in terms of truck stops around the region. We are definitely going to look, and this is very good information for us, at the areas and the corridors that do not have truck stops or adequate truck stops that provide adequate dressing spaces. So the ones that you've written to us or you've spoken to us about, we'll obviously look into, and I think Nikki has stated that we are looking at 8 economic corridors currently, but we do seek to expand that as we move on. The issue of compliance is going to be a big one, because developing a framework means that we might need to look at regulations. And when we have regulations, there will be an issue of compliance that will need to be taken into cognizance, especially when it comes to the critical issue of safety and security, because we do want truck stops to be a safe haven for trucks. And if they don't have the adequate safety and security, then it defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. So we are definitely looking at that. And as we go into the actual strategy and have the strategic interventions, those are the areas of intervention that we're going to be looking at when we actually have the colloquium with the final, or rather the draft truck stop framework that will be coming back to you guys and giving to you. Because at this point, it is like Ayanda has said, we are at the inception stage and we're gathering information to get to a point where we can tell you what needs to be done and tell you where the regulation is to be, and come present that to the industry at large. Thank you.
And guys, I want to just also mention that, you know, if you are an organization, a transport operator that is RTMS certified, this should be worrying you. You know, you should be concerned as to where your drivers are stopping, because it's part of the entire process of that certification. You know, one of my businesses is a CB, RTMS CB, where we go in and support transport operators to become certified. And it's a continual question that comes up around the driver health and well-being. So there is other reasons why we should be looking at this, if beyond just the obvious that we're talking about today. I think we've got one or two more questions we can take before time is up. We actually are out of time, but let's take one more.
Yes, Corinne Gallant. Corinne, I don't know if you still want to ask a question.
Hi, good morning, Harry. Lovely to see you again, Nikki, and you also, Ms.
Thank
Lali.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
work that you've presented here today, and I'm very excited to see that there's such a congruence of attention between what the provincial government in the Western Cape is doing around truck stops, what you at National is doing, what Nikki and her entire team is doing, and it's just really encouraging, and it seems like it's the right time now to start getting movement on these issues. Mishlali, you actually addressed me partly with your last comment now, because it was about the purpose of the regulations. You mentioned that there would be a legislative framework, and I think in our development of our truck stop framework, which was just recently completed, I think that was the biggest, I won't say barrier, but challenge that we have faced. Municipalities kept making the point that when they are receiving applications for truck stop developments, there is no guideline, there is no framework, there is no, you know, something that they can refer the applicant back to and say it must have the following, it must check the following tick boxes. So they really look to us to provide that kind of guidance. And through a process that we started, like you have done as well, a status quo assessment, which we did over a year, and then the actual development of the framework, which we did last year, we classified what we consider to be facilities that meet basic truck stop requirements, a service facility, and then a formal truck stop. Now we're at the stage where we are trying to get it adopted within our planning authorities, who actually have the responsibility to approve these applications. And it would really help, I think, if we had some kind of regulation that enforces these requirements, because at the moment the municipality can go, once they adopt the framework, they can go back to the applicant and say, you have not met these minimum standards. Can we negotiate that you add the following, because the services to our drivers need to meet the following standards? But it is driven by private sector. The applicant proposes certain services because that is what they deem the market need to be. So there's really no force cannot be exerted, and that's the difficulty. We're working on a good faith relationship almost to get the services up to standard. And then I wanted to ask in relation to that, once an application, whether it's an existing truck stop or a fuel station that wants to add additional services to become a truck stop, if they don't meet those requirements, what happens to that facility? What is sort of the legal repercussions if they don't want to comply? For new ones, I get it, you just don't approve it. But what about existing ones where you need to bring the standard up to meet your basic requirements? And I think I will leave it there. As always, we are very happy to continue to engage with anybody who's working in this field to help us figure this out as we go along and to share some of our learnings. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Karina.
Thank you, Corinne. So in our meeting with Department of Mineral Resources and Energy yesterday, they've got 3 categories which emanate from the Petroleum and Products Act, Act 23 of 2003, that you need to apply to be a site and retail. So that's what truck stops usually apply to. So that, but this is limited to the actual provision of the mineral. So that's the gas and the diesel, and they've got a compliance wing to it that you must comply to when you are this. But what we don't have, Corinne, and I think you know this quite well because you are stating it, that you also have in your strategy, we don't have a specific truck stop regulation, and that's what we're working with. So this framework is actually going to come up with that you must, and with the basics, because we can't overstretch what you must do. There are truck stops that don't even have facilities for trucks to park overnight. There are truck stops that park overnight. There are truck stops that are bigger in terms of the geographical spread and the landscape. But there are those that are smaller, that, for instance, you can't have dangerous goods and other different goods. So that's what the framework is actually going to look at, to ensure that the collaboration or the intergovernmental relations between municipalities, province, and national is clearly stated out, because we all know that transport is a concurrent function. So the actual application for a truck stop will go to municipalities, but there must be some overarching regulatory framework that says, for you to be a truck stop, this is what you have. And I think this is the actual reason why we are embarking on this exercise, so that those nodal points are very clearly defined as what they do, what facilities and what services they provide. And then you can have, the Rolls Royce. You can have the ones that will have the bigger facilities, which will not be, obviously all the truck stops. So that's actually exactly what we're trying to do with the classification that we'll have. And as I said, we'll have a national colloquium when we have a draft, so that everyone can have a bite and see what exactly are we then saying needs to be done moving forward. The good thing about there not being regulations is that we now have the leverage to start and create new regulations, which is a shorter process than to look at the regulations and rework the current regulations. So because there are no regulations, it gives us a nice a platform to start and create regulations for the operational truck stops. And we want to do this in collaboration, particularly with the provincial government and the municipalities, because it is a government sphere for the development of that legislative framework.
Thank you, Mahlali.
Thank you.
That's great.
Nikki,
Nikki,
could I go, please? Because I'm running out of time. I've got to catch a flight soon.
go for it.
Right. So I represent the Kempston Group. We're 3 truck stops representing the majors, one in Western Cape, one in Eastern Cape, and one in the Free State on the N1. Claudie partially answered my question there. So truck stop owners around the country will know there's been a very short talk on fuel in this whole presentation. So we've got a balancing act. Operators want to look at best fuel pricing and comfort and safety for their drivers. So we got to balance that, and we work well with the majors. Mkladi mentioned that they met with the DMRE, which is great, and I think you need to keep that conversation going, because the fuel sites, and we all operate in a diesel world here, most of us on our sites. That's what the trucking industry is. It's a regulated business. So diesel is regulated on your wholesale price that you buy. It's deregulated on the retail side. So all our truck stops have to own a retail license. Our biggest problem we have at the moment, we're the owners of the sites. So we're going to make sure all the bells and whistles are there for the driver. We have our biggest opposition at the moment is there are truck stops operating, there are fuel brokers operating, there's white sites around the country who are wholesalers that are operating in a retail market. Now, I know this is not for the safer stops, but it's a reality. We also have fuel brokers operating who offer on-road fueling that hijack our sites. We own the retail license. We got to pay for the upkeep. So it's not a level playing field we're operating in. I think the DMRE and the DOT and yourselves need to engage closer with together on how do you come up with a viable solution that you have legally operating truck stops. So that's my question.
I like that question, because when we met with the DMRE yesterday, that's exactly what we're speaking about. And to that effect, we're going to be having a national workshop and we'll invite all of you to that, because we had said to them that there needs to be explicit understanding by everyone who's currently at truck stops of the different three tiers that you can be. So you can either be a site and retail, which is what you are. You can be a wholesale in terms of licensing, wholesale license, or a manufacturing license. But we also know that there are illicit operations that are springing up all over the show. Most of them are in municipalities and they can't be found. So we do want them to come and give an explanation of also what they did, because you would remember, this was all over the news, that they did they went on a, can't remember what they call it, but they were gathering information on these people that are putting fuel and diesel with paraffin and water and all those things. But over and above that, it speaks to every issue that you've spoken to now. So when we have that workshop, we have not set a date out yet because we did just recently meet them. But when we have that date, they will give a presentation on exactly what they do, what the licensing are, what the current challenges are, but also what your challenges are. Because I do totally agree with you that it's a balancing act. The major responsibility of a truck stop is actually to be a petrol station, and the truck stop element seems to be a caveat or a bonus or an extension of that. So we do want to understand what those regulations are and what the responsibility of DMRE is. And as I also said, they also form part of the steering committee that we've established. So we'll have more information and gather more statistics on exactly what their role is and what their regulations and compliance is on this. And when we have that workshop, we'll make sure that we send the invite to all the attendees here and extend it also to other operators and other truck stop owners. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to repeat, my opening comment was that, you know, the framework is going to be highlighting or recognizing safe and compliant truck stops. And by compliant, we are referring to this compliance around having a retail license and selling diesel at retail prices, not working as a bulk or a wholesaler and then retailing. So it's definitely something that is being addressed. It's been come across over and over again. We haven't brought it in here because we recognize that there are different departments that have jurisdiction over this. This is DOT today, not the DMRE, but it is definitely something that we will be looking at. One of the very first questions on the self-assessment is, do you have a bulk wholesale license or do you have a retail license, and do you have a site license? It is, you can't move beyond that point on the survey. So it is our focus. I'm sorry it didn't come out that clearly in the presentations.
Thank you, Nikki. We've still got a few people in need of questions. So I just want to recognize Severs Leroux, Paula Swanepoel. We've got Olga Mashilu, we've got Leslie Mpofu, and we've got Patrick O'Leary here on YouTube as well, who want to ask questions. So do you want to take all these questions, or are we going to ask them to send you emails?
It's really up to you, Harry. I only asked for an hour and a half on this platform.
My side, no problem. I think people whose hands have been raised for quite some time is Severs Leroux and Paula Swanepoel. So let's take them perhaps. Severs?
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much for the presentation. I will be short so that everybody can take the flights and get to the destinations. I just want to get to the point of costs. We are situated in west from Gauteng, and I think if you have a look, we've got a truck stop halfway between Zeerust and Tarleton, and it's a different ball game if you talk about us in this environment and the N3 and, for example, the N1 to the south. But what I would like to say is we do everything that we can do, and I will appreciate it if we can get this initiative from the ground, because I think there was a lack of and a need for initiative like this to get from the ground so that we can compare our facilities, etc., with each other. I think one of the major things is you must go and speak to the drivers, speak to the people. And one of the biggest challenges, what I just wanted to mention, is the operators and the operational managers of fleets they were in some cases the biggest problems because they didn't want to pay. They didn't want to pay for a small amount to sleep over, for clean showers, for security cameras. We've got everything. Even if we are small, we are safe, and we comply with 90% of everything that you mentioned here. And but there are certain challenges, and we can't compare us with a bigger or the higher volume type of truck stops that exists. But as long as you can get the safety for the people and food and everything like that, then I think it will be good for us to get to a certain level, so that not to compare each other but to compare us with ourselves and to see where we fit into the whole system. And one thing that I just want to mention, I think it was mentioned, is one of the companies, I don't want to mention it, that provide certain facilities, brokers, you could call it that way. They phoned me and asked me for a deduction of 10% of truck stops because while they fill up with diesel through the system, they want a further 10% discount on the truck stop, and that makes it impossible for us to provide a service with security guards that's not people from the street. We pay dearly on the plotland. We are far from bigger cities, but we get people here from security companies so that the people who sleep here can sleep here in peace. I'm proud to say that we accommodated more than 60,000 trucks since we opened about 5 years ago without any incident, without any problem of prostitution, or without any problem of vandalism, without anything. And our cameras and systems are good. So we will appreciate it if we will join the whole program, and we will appreciate it to be rated and to see how we can improve our service and where we stand. But thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. That's exactly what we wanted to hear today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siebes. Paula Swanepoel.
Good morning, panel, everyone. I actually have a guest with me here who struggled to log in, and she made a dive into the office, try to be on time, and luckily she is. I have Kathy Bell for you, if you can just give her an opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much. That was great. So Nikki and the team, this collaboration that you are talking about, so we've got a success story, the NLCC. If you look at the collaboration with BUSA, Business for South Africa, and with the NLCC, so in other words, it is definitely the way to go. We've seen how effective it is when industry and government hold hands and they collaborate together to make sure that the logistics network is more efficient and that it's safer for drivers. Oh, and then Nikki, just a quick one. Many of our Artemis operators have got fantastic depots. I would love to see the SaferStops team go pay a visit at some of the depots and just see how magnificent it is. And then also they obviously put them up in hotels, etc. But I think that's another aspect where it'll be good. Apart from the national highways, it'll also be good to give acknowledgement to the industry that have invested significantly in terms of facilities for their drivers to make sure that they are safer, particularly guys that are running the PBS units and Artemis. But thank you. This is a great collaboration. Looking forward to it with all the other things that you're doing. This is excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you very much. Let's have Leslie Mpofu.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me. And let me also congratulate you for the wonderful presentations. This is indeed a very, very important forum, and I want to congratulate you for that. I wanted just to, well, first of all, foremost, I come from the Trans-Canal Corridor Secretariat, I wanted just to raise a comment or question regarding to special direct to Mihla and Ayanda, that in terms of the risk management or analysis and management, especially when it comes to issue of truck stops. I mean, I didn't see much on that in the presentation, because I think it's something that is very, very important. The evacuation plans, in the event there is a disaster within the truck stop, one truck catches fire, what are the plans? What is the strategy? And to evacuate you know, other trucks and all that. So I think it's something that is very, very important for us to consider, as well as the distance, the placement of truck stops in terms of distance from a settlement. I take it that from us at TKC, we see that is very, very, very key and important. That a truck stop should actually not be within a settlement, should be some distance away from a settlement, mostly because of issues of safety and security. We know that, of course, in the event, like I did mention, when a disaster happens, or there's a gas leakage, one tank is carrying gas, where if it's in the middle of a settlement, we could be having serious challenges. But of course, we also appreciate the fact that, especially on the South African side, whereby you also have issues of vandalism, issues of hijackings, issues of trucks also being torched and all that. Maybe you also want to consider that if maybe it's far away from a settlement, I don't know, but that's something that I want to know, to pick your thought regarding that. And Nick, you did also mention issues of investors, that you are willing to find investors who are actually looking at investing in such truck stop. At the TKC, currently, we only have one truck stop, which is also maybe not as a big truck stop like in Zerast, but we have had other you know, we have had other potential investors or entrepreneurs wanting to invest on the TKC in terms of truck stop, but they also have challenges in terms of getting finance. I don't know whether you are willing also, or your investors are only targeting South Africa. They can't maybe go across the border like Botswana and Namibia, because I know that for one, in Jwaneng, for instance, the land that has also been designated for truck stop in Kang, as well as in Charles Hill. But the challenge has been actually to get investors, and I know that also in Welvis Bay, there is also some interest also there in a truck stop. So hence I want to know whether your investors can we actually enter negotiations with them to actually you know, help in this regard. And lastly, let me also say we are willing as a TKC, you know, to work with ourselves, to collaborate with ourselves. We work with DOT quite very, very well, and because DOT, TKC is actually a baby of the DOT, so we work with DOT, and I feel a bit embarrassed that I have not yet met Ayanda and Mihla, but I think we should be working. We should actually be working together. Yes, and I think we should engage further even outside this meeting. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those. I'll leave the one for Nikki and the sponsorships for her. But I wanted to speak to the second last that you asked. The Petroleum and Products Act does stipulate how and where a petrol station must be established. Now, the problem in the South African context is that communities and settlements in particular tend to spring up where there's a lot of economic activity. So you'll find that there will be 2 shacks today, 2 weeks down the line, there'll be 12 shacks. And then before you know it, there'll be 1,000 and it'll become a settlement. So that's the current problem that we have. It's that petrol stations do comply, but then the settlements end up coming around the actual truck stops, especially when it's a truck stops, because truck stops are seen as lucrative economic business for a variety of things. It's for the employment of people at the actual truck stops. They want closer proximity, but also because, especially around the borders, you find that settlements are being created because trucks tend to stop for weeks on the borders en route. Let's give an example of Beitbridge. They can stop there sometimes for up to 15 days, especially in peak hours or peak seasons. So then the settlements gather around there with people selling either sweets or whatever they are selling to the truck drivers. That's the current challenge that we have. But also SANRAL, to answer your other question, has an obligation and a responsibility, and this is part of their regulations, to look at the entrance into the truck stops, but also when you are at the truck stops, they need to look at how effectively are trucks able to go in and go out. So truck stops do have to have, as part of compliance, as per the Petroleum Act, they have to have a strategy or a place where if you have leakages, if you have anything that happens to the gas, whether it's whether it's bombing or it's fire, they need to have those exit strategies. So that's also part of the compliance, Nikki, that we need to look at. But how effective are the exit strategies, particularly for trucks, because trucks take a long time to turn. They also take a long time to go in and out of truck stops. So we just need to have a conversation and with the truck stop owners to look at, are they complying with those regulations, because those are things that they need to be particular and look at. The other issues that you raised was on the evacuation plans, and the truck stop management. Yes. So those are the issues. Also noting the issue of vandalism and hijacking and also torching. Those are critical issues. And I think they were raised earlier on when looking at the issues of safety and security. It's not just around the actual truck stops. A truck stop is a node within a corridor. So we have a safety and management issue within the South African context of our trucks generally. So because truck stops are a node within the corridors, we need to be specific as to ensure that we heighten the security at the truck stops, which is the truck stop owner's obligation, but also en route, which is actually on the actual corridor, where we have the national policing, which is done by RTMC, but also with the metropolitan policing, because they have an obligation to ensure that there's safety and security of all trucks en route within our primary corridors. Nikki, on the last one about the potential of investment.
Okay, so it's a very big conversation, and I think that we need to take it into another platform a bit later on, but there are both private and government structures that are available. You mentioned yourself how CBRTA would be looking, and SANRAL are also looking at investing in infrastructure. But I think that let's leave that for another day, because time is really up. I need to move on to another engagement, Harry. I want to just once again thank everybody that's on the call today, that took their time to be here. We appreciate you, and we look forward to engaging with you. Yanda and Maklali, you rock. Thank you so much.
Thank you. 2 things. We'll invite everyone that's on this platform to that conversation with DMRE. And also when we have our national colloquium, we'll invite everyone here and also other people, other operators, truck drivers, and so on. So thank you so much, colleagues, for everything. Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Sheldon. All righty. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those haven't had opportunity yet, maybe you send
everyone.
your